Hey, everybody. Welcome back to ACES53 with Ed Parcaut and myself. Ed, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Uh-oh. Ed's frozen.
I'm not frozen.
Oh,
I can
somebody's
see
frozen.
everybody. I can see Rhonda down the green room.
Okay. Well, I don't know what we missed, but
You didn't
before
miss
everybody
anything.
didn't say anything. Okay. All right. Well, as you know, today is a Thursday. And what do we have on Thursdays is we have a special guest speaker, somebody who can bring a skill or talent to the table. So we're going to bring back Ronda Vaughn, who has been with us once before. So hello, Rhonda. How are you? Whoop.
Hello, how are you guys?
You want me to take over?
Yeah, if you can do it. There we go.
There you go.
There. I have to have Ed for technical support.
It's a second one over. Just click on it, and you don't have to touch anything else.
I'm just off to a bad start today. I froze. Now I don't know how to move things around.
Well, you froze, but we didn't, so we kept going.
In my world, in my mind, you all froze, and I was still on time.
Well, you just need to make sure that you hit the record, separately on each side, so then nobody freezes.
Right.
All right, so let's move on because this is not important stuff. What are we here to talk about today?
So we're picking back up from what we talked about on Tuesday, which is branding, getting yourself out there. How do you stand out in the sea of noise? And so that part of the reason why I brought Rhonda back is, we had her on a couple months ago, and we talked about she's a chiropractor, but she also is a coach. She's got multiple social environments that she's involved in. And what we're talking about is how does she keep getting herself out there? And then how does she keep her message clear? Because being involved in so many different things could cause confusion for people, but Rhonda's kind of figured out how does she keep it where people understand what's her main business, what are her other businesses, and kind of stop that confusion from taking place. So Rhonda, thank you for coming back and joining us today.
Of course. So my main
so
business.
Enthused, I can tell. She's running all over.
It got me thinking. I'm like, I don't know that I have a main business, Brian.
Anymore. Well, you did. I mean, you went to school to be a chiropractor, right? And a lot of people have said, okay, well, I've gone to school for this. I have my degree. I'm a doctor. That's all I'm going to do. And then you started expanding outside of that, right? And that's one of the things you're going to talk about today is how you started spreading yourself amongst the community and then building a community out of that. So we talked about on the last call, you have a group called Social Oak.
I'm sorry, this is not a call.
Right.
This is on our last call. We didn't have a call.
Oh, so call.
Two things you want to talk about. Two things you said that we have to talk about.
Yeah.
Write and call.
Yes.
All right. One of the things, Rhonda, most people understand, you're not supposed to say right after you make a statement, because that means that you're trying to get everybody to agree with you. And that's not what you do when we talk. I'm calling him out because I don't get to pick on him with so anymore. I don't get to drink anymore because he doesn't say it like he used to.
Oh, but man, when I cut up old clips and Opus, so.
But we all have our issues. I had my own issues that I said certain things. But
now
we just try to correct each other. Don't worry about it. We'll make sure.
The most confusing thing that Ed just said is had issues. I mean, he's still got a lot. So
yeah,
all right, go ahead.
We all have them, had them, and different ones. So go ahead,
right.
Rhonda.
Back to Rhonda.
You guys are fun. I want to come on more often and just hear you guys.
I tell people we're like the two grumpy old men from the Muppet Show up in the balcony.
Well, only one of us is old, man.
Mm-hmm.
I won't guess.
Yes. Anyway.
I won't guess.
That's okay. Right. Don't need a guess. That's all right. Yeah.
Ed.
You have a 50-50 chance anyway.
That's right. It's hard to tell with all the gray hairs everywhere. But let's get back over to Rhonda. So, Rhonda, we were talking before we came on the podcast, not the call, Ed. And you were going to talk about a unique strategy you had to kind of get yourself out and around in your community.
Yes. So when I first started, when I first started, I went out and I did what I called tabs around town. And it was during kind of the COVID time, and I was allowed to continue to work as a chiropractor in my state. So other people couldn't work, and nobody knew what to expect and what was going to happen. And I practiced where I grew up. I was already known in the community because I came back to the same spot that I lived, but I never really put myself out there as far as my practice went. I was word of mouth. I practiced with my mom, who had been in practice for 20 years, and I wanted to grow my practice. And I knew I had to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
I started going out and giving tabs every week. I call them, what did I call them? Friday tabs. And I would do $100 at local businesses that were locally owned. And people would go in and say, put it on Dr. Ronda's tab, and they'd get money off of their purchase. What ended up happening and was kind of weird for me was I remember walking in. What? I went broke? No, I got to keep working. That was the main point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got to see patients. I was still getting paid. I think this was even before they were just like people were getting all the unemployment. This was when really nobody knew what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I went one day to get my daughter and myself. This was after I'd been doing it for a while. I went to pick up dinner and we could sit in there at the time and order. And I had a drink and some random guy that I'd never seen looked at me and said, "You're Dr. Ronda. You're the one who gives tabs all around town."
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got embarrassed because I forgot that this was actually going to get me seen and known in my community. And he ended up buying my drink. Then shortly after that, I had a new patient come in and I said, "How did you find me?" And she said, "Well, you give tabs all around town and I watch you on the internet." And then I giggled to myself. I said, that doesn't even make me a good chiropractor. But she saw me in my brand and she said, "But it makes you likable and it makes you a good person."
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of where the branding was going in that sense when I was doing that.
So you're actually paying for clicks through drinking.
It wasn't all alcohol. I did it at lots of places. But I like where your head's at.
Yeah, it's just a different way of looking at paying for clicks.
Yeah.
Now, were you doing Instagram lives? Were you posting videos after the fact? How are you doing it? How are you sharing the word?
Before we go there, what was your ROI on this?
Oh, so I ended up
overall, how much did you spend and how many patients did you get from it?
I'm still doing it and it's years later. So, but I'll tell you, it's different now. I got lots of patients from it because it actually grew into my social oak group and it grew into a bunch of other things because I started to now have relationships with other business owners. And Ed, you say ROI, but I love the ROR and the return on relationships and like how it just reaches even farther in getting patients.
Right. But there's still a cost to it and there's still a long term, just so people know, this, how much did it I spent, $3,000 a month, but I got 5 patients out, I mean, just because people want to know how they spend their budget on marketing and other things. This is, everybody says, pay for this, promote it through, all the social media, when in reality, the old ways work.
Right. So this was $400 to $500 a month, depending if there were 4 or 5 Fridays in the month. Mm-hmm. Giving back to local businesses. And I probably got, I just got a new patient last week from it. So I probably get at least once a month. And a patient is worth thousands of dollars in my office. Right.
And the fact that now you're building relationships with them and then that goes on from there and that keeps going because they're like, well, this is what she did during the pandemic to keep us all going. See, a lot of in California, you couldn't do that. They shut down all the restaurants except in
right.
Well,
could you get it to go though? Because they left them open to go. That's what it was. They could still use the tap.
You could even get alcohol to go at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You can still get alcohol to go now.
Not here.
There's certain places that still allow alcohol to go. But when I did this, my very first place that I went, is my very first business owners that became my Gang of 5. And we started Social Oak.
And for people who don't know what Social Oak is.
Yeah. Well, we got to go Gang of 5 first.
Social Oak and Gang of 5. Social Oak is something called always have something to invite people to. Every month I have a gathering of my ideal client target market, anywhere from 50 to 200 women at an event. I started doing this on my own when the world was opening up in my office. We quickly outgrew my office and I started partnering with other business owners. That's my Gang of 5. They share the same ideal client as me. And so they're bringing their favorite clients in. I'm bringing my favorite clients in. And our events grew to 200 people. We have an event next week with, I think, 175 women signed up.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And when you say you share the same client, so for example, for people who don't know. So you're a chiropractor, and then you work with like a hairstylist, and people where that same customer will use those different services, and how do you refer each other to each other, right?
Correct. Exactly. So my gang of 5, I have Beyond Juice was the first tab that I ever did. It's a local organic juicery and salads and sandwiches.
Mhm.
And my favorite patients were going there. So I knew that's where my favorite people were already going. And then I added an online holistic nutritionist and personal trainer.
Mhm.
Then we added a car insurance lady. She was on accident because it doesn't seem like she would be the right
Is
person.
that a pun?
I was going to
Is that
say,
accident?
It wasn't, but that was good. But she's very, very big into local women-owned businesses and women brands. So that was the other person that we added. And lastly, we added the makeup artist. She was added because she wanted to go out and do it on her own and compete with me. So instead of letting her compete with me, I brought her in with me.
awesome.
Now, these women only events and women only things, they're through a nonprofit, I hope.
No. So we're not a nonprofit. We've talked about becoming a nonprofit.
The reason I'm saying
These are
this
free
is,
events.
well, not only that, so we have a cigar club in town, men only. The only way you can exclude some type of person is it has to be that nonprofit. It has to be a totally different thing. You have to be, so just look into that so that I'm just saying, just be careful. There's all these things that people are suing now because we just talked about it yesterday, Brian. You were telling me about somebody else getting sued for what they said online and other stuff.
Right.
I would just look into it, talk to somebody real quick and see what you should say just to protect yourself with today.
That's a fair part. So in 3 years doing this, when we had our very first bar crawl, this is a funny story, actually. Michelle was the new one that came in, and we had 100, I think there was 150 was our max. So we had about 200 people sign up for this event, 200 women and 1 man. And Michelle was new, and she said, "Are we doing something wrong?" And I said, "Michelle, there's 200 names and only 1 man signed up." I said, "Either he's not smart or he's a genius."
Yes.
So
Well,
I ended up calling him, letting him know that I actually told him, I said, "If you want to show up, you can show up, but this is all women and you." And he declined.
He must not have been single.
yeah.
He was single, and I think he was a genius in that part.
Well, you brought this up on your last visit, is that you also have socialic gents, which is the fraternal side of the organization that you put together as well.
Yes. So I started a men's club, but I don't actually go to it, and I helped other men do it. And there were 4 of them across the country. There's, I think, 21 female social oaks. And my call before you guys, I'm working with Steve Tullius, and we're together making like a networking group, an adventures group, a moms group. So we're making a bunch of other different groups.
Nice. He's still outside of Austin, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah, I need to go hang out with him soon.
All right. So I think we were just talking about branding, I think was what we're supposed to be talking about today. How did you find, so you put your groups together of women and you guys deal with the same clients, basically. So when you picked who your perfect client was, how did you come up with that?
My ideal client is my perfect patient. It started as I actually based it off of one of my current patients, and she is who I want to fill my office with. And so my brand had to be congruent with her.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at my social oak group and our branding there, it's Thursday nights drinking and eating charcuterie. That's really what it came down to. She is a mom that wants to get out of her house and have drinks with other moms on the 3rd Thursday of every month.
So that's your perfect client?
There's more to her.
I know. Well, let me back up. So your perfect client, that would be who comes in your office, who you like to work with, right? That's who we want. Our perfect client is somebody that we get along with, and we want that to more of those people. We don't want, and that's just whatever that is. But you created a group of people who actually work with the same clients. right?
Mhm.
As their perfect client. So you have two different groups here. You have your perfect client for your office, and you have your perfect client for your gang of 5 and the other thing,
But
right?
they're
For
the same perfect client. They're
Right.
the same
So
person.
yeah. So if it's someone who has disposable income, that's an ideal client you want, that's willing to invest in getting their hair done, so professional woman coming in, looking to help take care of themselves in a variety of ways. Is that
I'm
kind of
sorry,
a fair high level?
are you telling her that's what it is, or
Oh, I'm asking
okay.
based on what she
No,
said.
that's exactly what it is. So my ideal client is based on her name's Ashley. She's 33 years old. She's a college graduate. She's a stay-at-home mom because her husband makes more money, enough money for her to stay home. The kids are in upper elementary school. She's getting bored staying at home and taking care of the kids. She volunteers at the PTA. She works out at Core Pilates. She got a job at Lululemon more for the discount than the actual money to get out of the house and be around other people. And the reason she's my ideal client is because as a chiropractor and a doctor, most men don't make their appointments. I see men in my office, but I notice that if a man is in my office, it's because his wife made the appointment or his wife told him to come to me.
Not all men are that way. So please don't
Not all.
don't put us in
Not
that
all.
hole. Don't put us
I
in
was
that
one of
Not
hole.
those.
all.
When I was married, I was one of those.
Because I got 11 o'clock appointment with my chiropractor, so I don't want to hear that stuff.
Who found your chiropractor? How'd you find him though?
Referral, not from my
Okay.
wife.
Oh,
Nice
damn,
try
you
there.
beat
I
me to
saw
it.
you were trying to go that way. Yeah.
And it's not everybody,
No,
right? I get that.
I've been in this dealing with this stuff forever. I mean, since I was younger, and I got in. I used to ride a lot, cycled a lot, so I would always be on my bike for hours. And in order to get through all that issues and lifting and other stuff we did, you go to the chiropractor to get everything back where it needs to be. So
I love that.
You're
That's
saying you
perfect.
spend a lot of time sitting and spinning your wheels. Is that?
I'm sorry, are you trying to pick on me? Because that's not even funny. So
I know it's not, but I had to pull it
keep
out anyway.
trying, though. And maybe next time you'll get better.
I know it takes practice to improve.
That's right. All right.
Well,
So
that's what I started
go
the
ahead.
group. And it goes along with my brand as far as who I am. People get to know, like, and trust me outside of my office because you grew up with chiropractors. So you're probably not afraid of us, but a lot of people are.
My
Mhm.
uncle
So
was
part
one.
of this was, I'm sorry.
My uncle was one.
Okay. So you're familiar with them. A lot of people are afraid of us. So meeting me outside of my office and my practice makes me Rhonda, not Dr. Vaughn. And I'm a lot less scary to them.
I think a lot of people think you are like the brother on 3 Men and whatever, 2 Men and whatever, the boy, where you have Charlie Sheen and
Yeah,
what's his
he's just an idiot though.
right. But I'm just saying people don't put it up there at the same level of what it does, because it does help people, and people need to understand that.
Mhm.
Yes. And they're afraid that they're going to get hurt by me. Their fear of the unknown that I'm going to hurt them. And now you watch TikTok and Instagram and you see these videos and I always tell my new patients, it's pretty anticlimactic if you're watching these crazy videos. Yes, there are audibles and pops and you will hear sounds, but there's a lot of drama behind these videos. And it
Mhm.
scares people when you're in pain if I'm going to lay you down and put a strap on you and crank and pull your neck.
So you are one of those manipulators, you don't use one of those devices.
I do not use a Y strap and pull on your neck.
I'm talking about
I do
those.
use my hands.
No, those.
Oh, the activator.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope, I use my hands.
Now, I always get the name wrong. Is it C3 or D3? What's the other event that you do?
C3. So
These are
that's more of my business coaching and that's more of that branding because I started a group called C3, Community Connections and Collaborations,
Mhm.
where we get together with business owners. I actually just had my meeting today. And we have a few of those. We have about 20 of those across the United States now. And we talk about, as solopreneurs, how we can build and help each other build business. It's not like any other networking groups where you have homework and you have to make so many meetings every week and you have to bring so many instant referrals. It's more collaboration and collaborating with business owners.
And who's your perfect client for that one?
That would be any solopreneur who knows how to collaborate. Typically, they've owned their business 3 to 5 years, so they know what they want to do, but they're not quite there, and they want to expand even more.
All right. So
They want to think outside the box.
3 to 5 years.
Mhm.
Solar entrepreneur, because you said anybody. And then you went
Local
3 to 5 years.
entrepreneur.
I know, but I'm just saying you have a perfect thing there. You
I
just need to narrow it down. So people, because the reason we're trying to say this and narrow it down, and please, I'm not trying to be an ass. That's Brian's job, or a dick. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm the one who tries. Ed just is.
What I'm getting at is people are going to go, but she just said everybody.
Mhm.
And this somebody has their solar entrepreneur. But you started narrowing it down. I just wanted to reiterate that you narrowed it down to certain things, and that's what you have to do. You have to niche it down to each. So each one of these group, you have a perfect client, and a couple of them they're the same client, and other ones it's a totally different client, and that's all what I'm trying to get at. You, it's not the same person across all these different channels.
Correct. And I love how you say narrow it down, because I think a lot of business owners are afraid to really narrow down who they want to work with, because we're trained to think we can help everybody. And I can adjust anybody with a spine.
Mhm.
I don't want to. I know who I want in my office, who makes me happier, who I do better with. And I know there's a chiropractor down the road who can help the other person probably better, because that's who they want to work with.
I agree.
When we were
You have to niche it down. If you just because you niche it down doesn't mean you can't still take other patients and other stuff that comes through the door. They're just not the person you want to work with. And for most people to niche down, all you have to do is go through who your clients are and find the ones you like to work with. Those are your perfect clients, and then set up so if you just focus on them and get the message to them, you'll get enough of them, and you can still help their friends that you don't like, but you still can handle everything else. And I'm sorry, but I got to run. So
I know, but before you run, I love that you said that, because that's what I tell everybody to do. Yeah. That was the very short, perfect version of it, Ed.
Well, that's just, there's certain clients, like I had somebody reach out to me and go, hey, so-and-so has this rate and blah, blah, what can you do now? I'm thinking, there's nothing in this world that would allow me to work with those people again. There wasn't enough money to work with them. It's too hard. If it's too difficult to do something, don't waste your time with them. Move on, get somebody else. Be happy with your work. Brian, it was nice talking with you, both of you. I'm sorry I'm short today, but feel free to keep going. And again, Rhonda, it was nice to see you again. Thank you.
You too, Ed. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, now it's going to get good. All right.
Now it's going to get good without Ed.
I wanted to harass him more before he left.
I'm going to take these out really quick because they're dying.
No worries.
You hear me still? No, I can't hear you. Hold on.
Still hear you. But so you and I got to hang out. Can you hear me okay or no?
Okay. I'm going to be able to hear you in a second.
Okay. Let's see.
Oh, there.
There? Yes, no, no, yes.
Video. There we go.
There, can you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're good. So you and I got to hang out last month, and so I got to see a lot of this in action. We went to the D3 that morning. You had on an expert who taught people, like, how do they do is it C3 or D?
E3.
Okay. All right. C is in Charlie, right?
Community.
Yes.
Collaboration. Coffee.
That's what I thought, but then I thought you said D, and I was like, damn it. Okay. So C3, and you brought on an expert to teach everybody about LinkedIn. And that was one, I've sat on a few different LinkedIn trainings before, but I like how in depth she went and then showed examples on her own page and things like that. So it was really interesting to, in that short, 48 hours of spending time with you in Michigan, you had that event that morning, you had Social Oak that afternoon, and then you had Patience the next day. So how do you jump in between all of those different things, but still keep kind of a consistency of who you are? Because those are three the C3 and the Social Oak are kind of on similar veins, but then to go into an office, how do you keep authenticity about who you are as Rhonda?
I love that question. I struggled with that probably my first year of doing all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember asking my coach one day, when do I take off and put on all the different hats? Mm-hmm. Honestly, Brian, I'm all of those all the time. I really am, because even in my office, I'm inviting people to Social Oak events if I think they're going to fit in and enjoy themselves. Even at my office, if I have a business owner that might want to come to a C3 meeting, I hear them complaining. C3, to me, part of the reason that was such a good thing to start was, as a solopreneur, when I was married, my ex-husband was an employee. His mindset was completely different. To have a conversation about building business was very difficult. So that's where I get into that solopreneur thing of having a group of other solopreneurs to talk to. I have another business coaching client that I talked to, and her words last week is, I can no longer tell my mom what I'm doing. How many people have said that when you own a business?
Right.
So I wear the hats all the time because I am all of those people all the time.
Good. And I got to see that, like I said, firsthand, because we went in the morning, saw that presentation, then went back, then went to the venue you picked out for the social oak, met with the people there, and then, took me to the nicest gas station. It sounds really funny to say that. Fine dining in a gas station is not something I'd ever seen before, but that was kind of a fun, unique spot to go to also. But it was obvious with hanging out with you that you have the unofficial mayor title, because everywhere we went, somebody came up to you and said hi, or you knew somebody at places where we were. And you'd mentioned before, you grew up there, you moved away, you came back. Well, there's lots of people who do that. But the fact of going around, doing the tabs every Friday, hosting those events, inviting people to it. And there is there's two things. One thing you mentioned before, and one thing I'm going to add to it. One is, I used to have the employee mindset, so I understand that, because when you're told what to do, you kind of get your hands slapped for doing anything else. Like for me personally, one of the hardest things was going from a small company where I was allowed to do a lot of things to a large company where you were told, stay in your lane and that's not your job. Then when you go to become an entrepreneur, you're like, oh crap, I got to figure it all out. And where do I go? So to have a group like you created is something nice to go to, where you can feed off each other, learn from each other. You and I go to the same type of events where we go for self-improvement and learn from other speakers, even if we're a speaker who's there. So it's not like you just fly in, you go, oh, I'm here to talk, and then you bolt. You're sitting in the audience, taking notes, constantly trying to improve. And that's where I think the difference is, people who are employees, you only improve on what will give you a raise, versus are you trying to improve and scale in a variety of aspects that you have to do as a small business owner or as an entrepreneur. It's a little bit different.
Right. And to bring it back, I think what Ed was getting at, and where you were talking, when you had asked me to do this, we talked about authority. So I guess I was a little bit different, and then it was branding. What I added in under my name, my branding is honestly a connector. And it sounds very strange, because there are people who will wear red glasses to stand out, and that is part of their brand, or they'll wear a vest on stage, and that is part of their brand. So how do I put one word into what you see? But it's all of those things. I'm connecting business owners in one sense, and making that and helping them work together and collaborate. And the social oak aspect, I'm connecting women with other women, and whether they own a business or not, they tend to start to do business with each other. And then in my practice, I'm connecting people with health and, and wellness.
Right. So it's
that's
all
really my brand.
That's your consistency, is you're connecting everyone.
Yes.
Versus a lot of people, they're taught, they're raised old school, which is command and control, is I don't share information or resources because that makes it where a company can't get rid of me. Versus yours is, let's put it out to everyone, and whoever I attract is who I attract. And you have your ideal avatar to go to your coaching part, your red velvet rope policy, right? To let the right people in for all three of these businesses.
Yes. And part of the reason I didn't like going to the old school networking events, they felt very, what can you do for me?
100%.
And the difference that I'm making in the groups that I've created is, what can we do for each other?
Yes. Going to some events, there's a group here in Dallas I absolutely love. They're bringing good speakers. And the first time I went, I almost didn't go back, because people walk around like, hi, here's my business card, I'm Steve. I'm like, shouldn't you ask, do I need your business or what I do? Not just throw me a business card. But there are people that are taught that is, go with a box of business cards, and your goal is to just get rid of all those business cards. Yes. And that's not the way to do things this day and age. The first thing is, people want to feel seen and heard, and then understand, number one, do I like you? Number two, should we work on something together? But yes, the old adage of just, throw enough mud at the wall and see what sticks, or spaghetti, whatever, acronym you want to use, that's not the way to do it anymore. And so for people who are back on here, and kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, so you started doing the tabs, And I don't think you ever answered, were you going live and doing it? Were you just taking videos? How did you get the message out there?
I did a video. I would go to each individual location and store that I was, or business that I was promoting. At first I started doing videos with the business owners. I quickly stopped doing that because, as you probably know, people do not like to be on video.
Right.
And they're very awkward. And here's the funny part. In the beginning, I didn't like to be on video. I still don't love to be on video, but I'm okay with it now. And I remember the very first video. If you go on it's going to be on my Vaughn Chiropractic Instagram, and you scroll way back to probably June of 2020, 21, I don't remember. And you watch my video, it's awful. It's so bad. And I remember we had to be outside because it was COVID. We couldn't be inside, or we had to wear a mask. And how can you do a video in a mask? So we were outside. And I remember Megan, it was the first time I met her. And she looked at me and she said, "Should we watch the video?" I said, "Absolutely not. We won't post it if we watch it. We'll redo it 20 times. So I started doing it with the business owners. But one of the things I did, Brian, and I was just telling a coaching client this morning, because he's going to start doing the tabs. I never did a tab when I couldn't meet the owner.
Ah, that's smart. Okay.
Because I wanted to build relationships with the owner. And it didn't mean I wanted to necessarily do work with them later, because some of the owners I met and I didn't want to do work with later. But I got to figure that out in those meetings.
Makes sense. So it wasn't just support the business, it was also start forming the relationship. So it was good intent, because you went in with the idea of, I want to do a tab for this business, but you had to create the connection with the person who ran it. Okay.
Right. I think there's good intent no matter what, whether I decide to work with them later or not, because if I decide to work with them later, it's to collaborate and help their business and my business and work together.
Absolutely.
So I am not for everybody. I am fully aware of that. So they may not be for me and I may not be for them. And that's how you have to meet somebody to know, right?
You can't be everybody's friend. Everybody can realize this when it's their personal life, but when it's professional life, people just start thinking, I got to help everyone. It's like, are you friends with everyone you meet, or do you gravitate towards people you like and want to spend time with? It should be the same thing with customers.
Correct. And not just customers, but other business owners if you want to collaborate with. I can't imagine having a monthly event every month with collaborating with business owners that I don't like to work with.
Right.
That would be terrible. People, if you ask our community, and this goes back to the branding, when people see me, they automatically assume that my gang of 5 have been my best friends my whole life.
Oh, interesting.
So we are now connected. So that's the other thing. If you decide to start collaborating with business owners locally, you better make sure that they have a good reputation.
Oh, 100%.
Right? You are who you hang out with.
Guilt by association is on so many things. I've turned down speaking on stages that I'm like, I don't know that I want to be seen on that person's stage, because people will quickly dismiss, especially the day and age we live in, where cancel culture is, well, you like this person I don't like, so you and I can't be friends, which I don't understand that whole thing. But that's where a lot of people are. So you're right. It's your reputation is affected by who's seen as to be in your sphere, your circle.
And your brand is affected by it.
100%.
Goes right back to the branding that Ed was. I think Ed, I don't think we got to the branding quick enough for Ed.
Yeah. Well, he was just in a rush today, so it's fine. We were talking on Tuesday, and when we were talking about that, it is branding and establishing authority are kind of the same thing. So your brand is, how do people look you up? And then once they look you up, what is your authority? How did you grow that? And so they're tied together so close, you could almost use them interchangeably, but you can't really have authority if you don't have a brand. And so they kind of build upon each other.
So I think too, what you're kind of talking about in that sense, you can have a personal brand and a business brand.
Yes.
And I think when you're small, we've talked about this so often with my coaching clients and my C3 group. I think that when you are a local, not even local, but so for me as a brick and mortar in my practice, my personal brand and my office brand are very closely tied.
Right.
But if you get into a bigger picture and you become somebody like, Apple, they're not necessarily so tied anymore. Apple's brand, that it's not as so closely tied.
Right. Now it's still seen as innovative, but it's not I'm different from all the PC users because now there's as many Mac users and everything. It's not the standout brand that it once was.
Well, I'm
Agreed.
saying just like even like Steve Jobs and Apple don't have to be the same
Right.
brand.
Yeah.
He can have his
And
own personal brand.
we talked about that on Tuesday. You look at most people out there, people know who Gary Vee is, but they only work with Vaynerchuk Media because of Gary Vee. Bradley has Lightspeed. You can keep going down the list. It's most people, it's the personal brand that drives people to want to do business with their company, because very few companies are actually doing it. Elon Musk, okay? So Tesla or X, you're not following X or Tesla, you're following Elon. And that's kind of what it's grown to.
But I don't think that's always true because I'm not following, I am blanking on his name. Who owns Amazon?
Jeff Bezos.
Okay, I was saying Bezos in my head, but it didn't sound right.
Yeah.
So I know nothing about him.
He's not trying to build, people are fascinated with him because of his wealth, I think, more so than he's not out there giving interviews. He's not really, the only thing you hear about is what he's doing to Amazon employees or what his expectations are. He doesn't really have a personal brand.
But that's what I'm saying. So some of these bigger companies, Nike, I'm
Mhm.
not following who founded Nike and who started
Yeah.
it. Nike has their own brand, where
Right.
I'm sure that those people do. I had a really good conversation with somebody local because I'm in Detroit, that the Ford family actually does have a personal brand, but most people don't know it. I know a little bit more because I'm in Detroit. You
Yeah.
probably have no idea about the Ford family
No,
brand,
not at all.
right?
But as going back to smaller companies, entrepreneurs, and employees need to be growing their personal brand, because let's say you're an employee. I'm sorry, I don't believe that there's really the safe job like my parents raised me. In the time my parents were there, when you went to work for a company, you worked there for 20 to 30 years, you had a pension, they took care of you the rest of your life. This day and age, there's not a sense of loyalty between companies and employees. It's very rare because pensions are gone. So now why don't employees chase a higher paycheck if they're not going to be taken care of long term? And companies, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the term this year, is the great unbossing. So a lot of companies, in order to meet their numbers, are getting rid of mid-level managers. So they're keeping the people on top and they're keeping the workers, but they're getting rid of the mid-level jobs. That used to be the safe job. If you were a director, a regional vice president, that used to be, hey, I made it, I'm good for a while. And those jobs are being wiped out left and right. And so it does have to be, what's your personal brand? Make sure that if you're building your personal brand, it doesn't conflict if you're an employee with your company. But it's kind of the same rules. You don't want a personal brand that turns off people who could be your clients in your business as well. So you kind of have to show people who you are, but don't destroy one with the other,
Right.
if that makes sense. So it goes
Yeah.
back to what you were saying. You're consistent across all of your brands, as a chiropractor, as a coach, as Social Oak, as C3. Is it C3?
C3.
C3. Okay, I'm just gonna remember it like the robot, C3PO. Okay,
Yeah.
so C3, all those you're saying, I'm the connector. I'm still the same person across all those. Versus,
You
yeah,
saw me at all three of those. Was I different at any of those events?
not at all. But I got to see it firsthand. But
Yeah.
what's funny is we're talking about this, but people do this on social media. So their Facebook account can be their kids. LinkedIn is, oh, I always wear a suit. Instagram is them out drinking with friends. Like, people don't realize they're doing it on social platforms. And when people look at you for anything, they're not going to check just one platform. And the first thing that they'll look at is go, well, this person isn't the same person on these three platforms. How can I trust who they are with me? And so that's another part of it, is being consistent across social media, not just who you are in person, but what are you creating in person, online, you name it. That
Yes.
makes people want to know, like, and trust you.
When people are nosy and they want to know your personal life. So even on my coaching page and even on my chiropractic page, I do have personal stuff, and those tend to get more views
Yeah.
than, I think one of the biggest views we ever had on my chiropractic page, my mom and I showed up in the exact same outfit.
That's funny.
I actually quit shopping at that company and I loved their clothes, but we both stopped there and we walked into the office one day and we had the exact same outfit on, not planned. And they
That's
took a picture of that. It had
Mhm.
nothing to do with chiropractic,
Right.
but it was funny to people. It made us likable. It made us human.
Mhm.
And that's part of our brand.
I was just, I don't know if I introduced you to Ryan Michelle or not, but he was in Dallas last Friday and I went and hung out with him. And that's one of the things that he talks about is if you only pitch your business the entire time, people get bored and move on. And so they teach, if you want to go viral and things, sharing your personal thoughts, sharing your, what you do. One of his big clients, I went to their event last January, to Ryan's event in Florida, and there's a Epic Dental. And they got out, and one of their biggest posts was talking about how for Christmas, they don't spend it with outside friends and families, just them and their kids. They said, I don't want my holidays to be ruined by an aunt or an uncle, a parent or grandparent who has a different opinion. Even we're going to get into politics. So they felt like the best thing for their family is they do holidays together, and then they'll meet with family outside of that. And look at how many people dread Thanksgiving, right? It's like, oh, well, let's get together with family, and there's going to be some drama. So their answer was, let's just take it out. And that was one of the posts that went viral, and they got a lot of hate from parents who are like, well, you'll never see their grandkids and blah, blah, blah. But it's posts like that. For me, I talked about what was life like a year after getting fired. That had nothing to do with my business. I was just talking about where I was mentally, and, after being fired and everything else. So you're right. You have to pepper in who you are, not just what you do.
Yeah, people are nosy and they really want to know when you mess up, because then you make yourself human.
So Ed's not on here to defend himself, and I won't attack him, but he has a podcast called Inner Edison. And the thing that he wants to know about people is don't just get on and talk about your successes, but what are the failures that you ran into across the way? And he's had a lot of guests who are like, well, I don't want to talk about that. And he's like, well, then you're not a good fit for the show. And it is interesting how many people don't want to talk about the down days or the financial struggles, but you look at really polarizing people that people like. Ed Milet talks about they were so broke the water got shut off, and they were having to use the gym for a shower or go to the pool. So I think the more you share the struggles, the more people bond with you because they want to know that they're not alone.
It's so funny. I was texting with a girlfriend this morning, and she always wants to do a podcast. And I was like, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
And I sent her a text this morning after a little bit of a interesting conversation last night. And I was like, dating, divorce, and business.
Yeah.
In your 40s. Like I said, that's what we're talking about. I said, learning patience, rejection, and resiliency in all three areas.
Yeah. We'll have to find, so dating, divorce, we'll have to find another D word for business, but then you're on to something. Like you can have your
endeavors.
D3 and D3s. Yeah.
Yeah. You'll get your D3 out of this, Brian.
Exactly. I will. Eventually I will get there. Yes.
Yeah. But people want to hear your mess ups. I think that's a part of my brand as well. I don't know if you even know this, and I talk about this I don't talk about it very often. One of the things in my branding, when you met me, and which was fairly new in my Black Diamond Club days.
Yep.
I ran a dog rescue. Did I ever tell you this?
No.
Okay. So I ran a dog rescue. I have been in dog rescue for 15 years next month. And for about 10 years, I ran this rescue. I took it from 2 women and blew it up. I made it huge. Some of the reasons I made, and I was into community. That's why I always say the connector. That really is who I am to the core innately. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I did was by building this community was I was the butt of every joke. Mm-hmm. Legit, like every joke. And I took the blame for everything wrong, and I would own it. And I really think that's how I made the community. The tricky part is have you been to one of the Black Diamond Club events that they ask you put it out on Facebook to ask, this is a great way to find out if you want to know what your brand says and what you say about yourself, put on your Facebook, describe me in 3 words.
Ah, okay.
And I did that. If I had done that 4 years ago, everybody would have said dog lady. Everybody would have said rescue.
Yeah.
And when I decided to grow my practice and grow these other businesses, I took every dog-related post down. I had to rewipe my entire Facebook, my entire Instagram. Crazy story. I stepped down from the rescue. A month later, we're recognized as like the 4th largest boxer rescue in the United States.
Wow.
One of the best.
Yeah.
I don't know who ranked it, so this could all be a scam. I don't know.
Your mom, yeah.
Yeah, right. Brian, I never posted about it. And the girl who took over took all the credit.
Oh, wow.
And I don't care who took the credit because I didn't do it for accolades, but
Right.
I knew I could not post that on my story or on my page because I
Mhm.
was trying to get rid of being the rescue lady.
Yeah. Well, the
Because
good
if
news
you
is
don't like
you're
dogs, you
not
like
the cat lady. Like, that's a
oh,
whole different.
no.
But I see what you're saying. That is, be careful with what you're posting because that's what you become.
Yes.
And
But if you want a quick way to find out what people think of you and what your brand says and what you're saying to people, ask them on your story on Instagram and ask them on your Facebook. Describe me in 3 words.
I have seen reach out to friends and family and ask, what are my superhero powers? That one I have seen, but I've not seen the 3 words one.
Yeah,
So
it'll real quickly tell you what you're putting out there to the world.
awesome. Well, hey, we've been on here now 45 minutes today. So I know you've got to get back to work. I got to get going to another event. What's the best way for people to find you?
You can find my Instagram. I have, and you can follow my personal one because I don't hold back there either. It's dr.ronda.vaughn. Ronda Vaughn coaching is my coaching, and Vaughn Chiropractic is my practice.
There we go. And you're located where again?
In Waterford, Michigan, just north
There
of
you
Detroit.
Yes. So, well, thank you for coming back on today and for sticking around after we got rid of Ed. I mean, that when Ed had to leave. So, since he'll watch
Thanks
this.
for having me, guys. Always fun.
Yes. So for everybody else, thank you once again for joining us on ACES53. It's Ed Parcaut and myself on Tuesdays, and on Thursdays, like today, we bring on a special guest who we call the Joker, and somebody who has a special skill or talent that you can learn from. So Rhonda, thank you for joining us today. And for everyone else, we'll talk to you later. Bye. All right.